Donaldson.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. As usual, by the time I get my opportunity in these statements, almost every decent point has been made, and Adam Price has well said that.
I could say we'll move on then. But,
well, you could. I'm sure you won't, Deputy Presiding Officer, being a fair-minded President of the Assembly. But as Adam Price has effectively pointed out, as the document itself is merely a repetition and rehash of material that has been well cooked before, a repetitious criticism of it perhaps may not be totally out of place. But when I used to go to Sunday school as a small boy, one of my favourite hymns was "Tell Me the Old Story," and of course that is what we've got here. And I think the First Minister has, in a sense, been kind enough to admit that that is the case. Because when I went through this document and asked what's new and went through taking Wales forward, I struggled to find anything which was new at all. And of course we can all laugh at the various platitudes that are in it. All governments produce documents of this kind. And I'm far from saying that the Welsh Government is responsible for everything that's wrong with Wales and has totally failed in the course of the last 20 years. But the main point which arises, I think, from our experience of the last 20 years is that the Welsh Government's failure relative to what's been going on elsewhere in the United Kingdom and the rest of the world is very apparent indeed. And we've had the various statistics bandied around by the leader of the Welsh Conservatives and by Adam Price a moment ago. And it is true that the Welsh people are poorer today, relatively, than they have been for many years. And it's correct, as the First Minister said, that, to an extent, that because of industrial change, coal and steel were well-paid jobs, and those industries could not be sustained at the levels that they used to employ. We haven't managed to attract into Wales the higher-paid jobs which should have replaced them. And that's the key challenge for the years ahead. The only thing that really matters in this document is the bit about building an entrepreneurial culture, because if we can't raise the capacity of the Welsh economy to create wealth, we can't generate the tax revenue that pays for all the public services, which are the good things that we want to see and which are well set out in the rest of the document. And here I don't think that the Welsh Government's story is impressive at all. Most recently, of course, we've seen the fiasco over the Circuit of Wales. Here was a massive private sector project which, had it been given the go-ahead, would have brought in a very substantial amount of capital for that particular enterprise, but on the back of that, much else might have been attracted. And the approach of the Welsh Government on that was so myopic, I could hardly believe it, as we've been led up that path for the last year or 18 months, only to be dropped off the edge of a cliff into the drain that the First Minister referred to in his remarks a moment ago. And that is symptomatic of the problem, lack of vision in the Welsh Government, as Adam Price has passionately pointed out. And I can't help reflecting, as I have reflected previously, on what's going on 60 miles away from Cardiff to the east with James Dyson's Technology Park. Why aren't we attracting such things to Wales? But it's because the attitude of the Welsh Government is wrong. And for the future, it should realise that governments can't create an entrepreneurial culture. Government is part of the problem here. If Wales is to become more competitive, then the regulatory burden has to become more proportionate. The tax burden has to become more proportionate. Here we do have an opportunity, and here the document is totally silent. But now we're getting these tax-raising and tax-varying powers. What we should be seeking to do is to make Wales more attractive than other parts of the United Kingdom, to help to redress the balance which we've inherited from the past and the mistakes of governments of all parties, whether it be at the UK level or indeed here in Cardiff. And business rates, again, why is there no long-term thinking about how we can lift this burden, which is such a block upon new businesses, small businesses, getting off the ground in the first place, because the cost of premises is artificially increased by a business rate system which is antiquated and inappropriate for the modern world. And Brexit does offer challenges, obviously, and the First Minister is always talking about the challenges. What about the opportunities? The First Minister is an accomplished advocate You know, he defends the indefensible in a very persuasive way, very frequently in this chamber. He is an advocate for Wales in other parts of the world, but his constant jeremiads about how it's the end of the world if we leave the single market is not the be-all and end-all. There is no single market, actually, anyway, because as James Dyson himself, who sells manufactured goods within the European Union, pointed out only the other day, there's a sequence of segmented markets. Yes, there is a single system of regulation very often, and that is often misused to the disadvantage of industry. But if the First Minister could offer some sort of ray of sunshine for the future, and hope and optimism for exports, not only to the European Union but also to the rest of the world. Of course, as he rightly says, we export more from Wales to the European Union than other parts of the United Kingdom, and we're not going to replace that overnight. We're not going to have to replace it overnight. Exchange rate movements in the last year have more than offset any putative increase in tariffs which are likely to be imposed if there's no deal with the EU. You know, real businesses in the real world are nimble and flexible. They have to be or they don't survive. This is the problem with government today, is it is not nimble, it is not flexible, it has no real vision for the future, and that's why this offers us no more than any of the previous documents which it adds to the huge pile that no doubt we'll be adding to on an annual basis for the future.